Nobody needs another review of Demon's Souls, the game that started it all. Now a multi-million-dollar franchise, it is sometimes easy to forget that before Elden Ring, Bloodborne and Dark Souls, there was Demon's Souls, a sure-to-fail, doomed project that no one at the time of its development believed in. Well, except legendary Big M himself, of course. Since its inception in 2009, Souls has become so much more than a singular niche title with a passionate hardcore fanbase. If you are in some way interested in gaming culture as a whole and haven't lived under a rock for the past 15 years, you've heard of this game, or one of its successors. Hundreds, thousands of lengthy, in-depth video essays, extensive reviews, streams, podcasts, Souls is everywhere. It has dominated the video game landscape for quite some time now, and pretty much everything that can be said about this series has been said in one way or another. Nobody needs another review of Demon's Souls. For this reason, I never cared to write one. This is one of my favorite video games of all time. Heck, it is one of my favorite pieces of media of all time. I am pretty much constantly playing this game. Boletaria is like home to me, and I have been coming back to this place for more than 10 years, again and again and again. It is true what they say, thou canst not exit a nexus. And for my part, I don't intend to do so anytime soon. And still, sitting down and putting into words what makes this game so special always felt kind of pointless to me. Creators like Matthew Matosis and Vatividia, or the OGs like Quaylog and Epic Namebro, have produced hours and hours of analytic content examining every nook and cranny of the game. Mechanics, lore, story, characters, quests, builds, boss strategies. You can fill a lifetime consuming all the content there is for this game. Back in the day, I gobbled up every bit of content I came across regarding Demon's Souls. I truly felt a sense of community back in those days. A small yet dedicated group of people theorizing about lore, interpreting item descriptions, exchanging battle strategies to deal with Flame Lurker, and so on. Truly golden days. For the longest time, I had the strong conviction that there was a broad understanding of what Souls is, why we love it so much, and why it means so much to so many people. What made Souls so special was all of these things. A dark, mysterious world filled with secrets that were built right into the environment, some of the most intricate and thoughtful level design to ever grace a third-person RPG, characters that ranged from tragic to wacky to outright devilish, and perhaps the most prominent feature, enemy and boss design that took the player seriously by introducing some genuinely challenging encounters. This is what Souls was all about. All of these things were important in equal measure to create that unique vibe that was so unlike everything else on the market back then. Naturally, different players had different priorities. Some didn't give two shits about the Old One or King of Land, the Monumental, and how it all came together, and were simply looking for the thrill of battle. Others considered themselves true lore seekers, compiling pages upon pages of theories about the nature of God, the true intentions of the masked society, or what was up with the Sixth Archstone. Others were just there for the vibes and the world, and you know what? It's all valid. That was a long time ago. Things have changed and discussions have shifted. One of the core reasons for why I'm sitting here making this video is the current reception and debate surrounding FromSoftware's latest work, Elden Ring, and, to an even greater extent, the DLC Shadow of the Erdtree. While browsing the web for reviews, video essays, and discussion threads, I had a sort of epiphany. The community of old was gone. Souls had achieved mainstream appeal, and with it came an everlasting wave of heated debates whether the latest batch of big bad bosses may be a bit too bad, or if the players just had to man up and get good. Pages upon pages filled with comments from people who were convinced that Souls has always been about the challenge and that this is what it's all about. On the other side of the battlefield were players who were just burned out by the constant upping of difficulty, the endless attack combos of bosses, the wonky camera and hitboxes, and cheap tricks that the game pulled to elicit any kind of challenge. No longer was there a friendly and respectful exchange of ideas and opinions, just constant fighting between the bravest keyboard warriors the world has ever known. Look, I'm not here to shit on Elden Ring and the discussion culture that it nurtured. You can check out my other video if that's what you're here for. I fully realize that I sound like an old fart by saying this, reminiscing about a golden past that always looks a little brighter through rose-tinted glasses of nostalgia. All I'm trying to say is that in 2009 and the following years, the Souls community was a community. Sure, difficulty and boss design or combat in general has always been part of the discussion. Going back as far as Dark Souls, some people have always called for an easy mode or any way to adjust the difficulty that goes beyond what the games offer mechanics-wise. In opposition, some fans consider difficulty as a tool for entertainment that shouldn't be touched by the devs in the form of a simple slider. Debates about difficulty were heated back then, but the love for these games, the love that we all shared, went beyond just lusting for challenging boss fights. This was merely one piece in the mosaic that was the Souls experience. That is why I'm here, and that is why this video exists. I'm here to tell you about all the ways in which Souls is more than difficult boss fights. I'm here to argue that the Souls-like genre does not and can never exist, because Souls can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people, and it all started with Demon Souls. Demon Souls is a masterclass in world building. When I think about Demon Souls, I barely think about all the challenging boss encounters it had. When I think about Demon Souls, I think about its world, the northern land of Boletaria and the Nexus at its center. Pretty early on, the game makes it surprisingly clear what this world is. Demon Souls is refreshingly direct about this and not nearly as obtuse as some of its successors. Sure, every game that followed had an intro cinematic in the same fashion as this game. The core background of the story is laid out here, as are the main actors. To this day, FromSoft just loves to call out names of plot-relevant characters during the intro. From
Sage Frake the Visionary,
all the way to
Sir Gideon Othmere, the All-Knowing.
This has become a staple of the series. But Demon Souls goes one step further. No other game introduces the world in a straight-up way as the Monumental does in this game. After slaying your first demon,
the Monumental awaits the above
and tells you of a great plight that has befallen Boletaria. He recounts the tale of the Old One, a demon of unfathomable power that has been awakened in the course of current events. This is a recurring event, for he and other Monumentals have lulled the Old One to slumber once before in a distant past. However, by dark rites performed by the King of Boletaria, a land, this soul-devouring beast has come back alive, and with it, a colorless fog has engulfed the land, bringing with it demonic beings that roam free and slay everything in their path. The state of the world is reflected in every level you visit during your playthrough. Soul-starved beasts are lurking in the dark, waiting for the ill-prepared player to stumble into their traps. Soldiers who at some point served some higher purpose have gone mad and, from a twisted sense of loyalty to their king, are now attacking everyone and everything that moves within the perimeter of the castle. It truly is
the end of Great Boletaria as we know it.
From talking to some of the few yet still sane characters that inhabit this world and reading the level descriptions inscribed on each archstone, you learn tidbits about the land and its history. You hear about an old temple buried deep beneath the mines, built to worship an ancient god. You hear about an idol that was created in the queen's image, waiting atop an ivory tower for the poor and the wretched to hear their pleas and end their suffering. You hear about a tribe of shamans that sacrificed the souls of their dead to the winds. You hear about a saint and her most faithful knight who ventured into the mire where the truly depraved souls are living out their meager existence to aid them and rekindle the smallest flame of hope. And then you go there and you see it with your own eyes. And it still feels like all you are getting is a glimpse into a much larger truth. The mystery remains. Demon's Souls is very restrained when it comes to lore presentation. Unlike Dark Souls, this game only occasionally drops hints and suggestions as part of item descriptions. Souls you obtain from bosses are the main source of lore in Dark Souls. Wanna know what a boss soul in Demon's Souls depicts? The name of the boss you obtained it from, and the fact that you can use it to get a lot of souls. That's it. It's a weird balance this game strikes. On the one hand, it's the most directly told story in any Souls game, but on the other hand, it leaves so much stuff open for interpretation and scarcely nudges you in a clear direction. You can play for hours and hours on end without getting a new juicy piece of lore, only to pick up the Talisman of Beasts in the next minute and have your entire worldview questioned just by a few lines of descriptive text. Even though later titles have expanded the backstory of their worlds in vast and beautiful ways, Demon's Souls hits that tight spot of having just enough lore to make you care and come up with your own wild interpretations. It really is quite unique in that way. Demon's Souls tells a deeply human story. Rather, I should say Demon's Souls tells deeply human stories. In the course of the game, you come across a number of people from various places of the world. Some, like you, are trapped in the Nexus and dwell there in an assumingly safe state instead of venturing into the vile and vicious outside world. But not everybody has made it to the safe haven. There are people out and about on their own business, following their own intentions. For the most part though, people that have preserved their sanity and yet are still outside the Nexus are not doing so of their own volition. On more than one occasion you find people caged, trapped, or simply lost in the dark. Saint Urbane has been tricked by these selfish and greed-filled patches and is now trapped below in a dark cavern waiting for salvation. Sage Frake is spending his time in a dark cell in Latria, only illuminated by a lighting spell to keep himself sane. The witch Yuria and Bjor of the Twin Fangs have suffered a similar fate, just as Yurt, the Silent Chief. A striking yet ominous figure that may have been locked in a cage for good reason. All of these characters are more fleshed out than they seem at first. If you're on a casual first playthrough, you'll probably miss many details regarding their backstories and a lot of nuance that went into the writing of these characters. Take Stockpile Thomas for instance, the guy who drops the famous line,
"You have a heart of gold. Don't let them take it from you."
When you first talk to Thomas, he will offer to take care of some of your belongings. The stuff you picked up but don't really need, he puts into storage, preventing it from wearing you down. Talk to him again and he will open up a little, telling you about his wife and daughter and how he lost track of them when they fled the castle to escape the demon scourge. In Boletaria, by exploring the area and cutting down 2 corpses hanging from iron chains, you find a jade hairpin, seemingly belonging to some commoner. As it turns out, those 2 corpses were Thomas's wife and daughter, even though the 3D in-game model for them is male, as they didn't have a female corpse model for some reason. You can hand over the hairpin, leaving Thomas in grief, but ultimately acceptance of their death. But it doesn't end here. By engaging in more conversation with him, Thomas will start reproaching himself. He'll admit running away on his own, leaving his wife and daughter to their fate, and hating himself for it ever since. This story recontextualizes this character and also the relationship between him and the player. Thomas is very concerned about your safety. Every time you leave the Nexus and come back, he will state that he was worried sick about you. Knowing his backstory, it's beginning to make sense, as he may perceive the player as a sort of substitute for his child and or wife, someone to care for, someone to keep safe. Maybe he won't fail this time. There is a royal knight carrying an intricate sword and shield combination roaming the castle grounds of Boletaria. Talking to him will reveal that he's on a mission to investigate the state of the land, as he is quite taken aback by the masses of mad and soul-starved creatures residing in the castle. This knight is called Ostrava of Boletaria, and he is in dire need of your help. 2 more times will you have to save him, once from captivity and once from an assault of red-eyed knights. He will also appear in the Nexus from time to time, dropping some lore about the king and his royal knights, how Boletaria was once a respected kingdom, and how a land led the people with a firm but compassionate hand. It is rather obvious that Ostrava is a land's son, as he calls out the misdeeds of his father as soon as you meet him for the 2nd time. At first, Ostrava is in denial. He came to this land to cleanse his father's name and rid him of the vile rumors surrounding him. Yet, at the end of his journey, he has to face the truth. The rumors were true. The old king has fallen prey to demonic influence and has in fact become a demon himself. Ostrava, whose true name is Ariona, as we learn from Bjor, is a broken man the last time we see him. He's sitting on the stairs leading up to his father's chambers in desperation and sorrow. He tasks us to rid this world of yet another evil, the king. In his last moments, Ostrava succumbs to the darkness and makes a fatal choice. The venerable Sage Freyk is another tragic figure in this tale. Driven by the lust for knowledge of the soul arts, the power to manifest magic through the transformation of souls, he ends up in a dark cell where he lingers for ages, as he tells you when first you meet him. Freeing him will have Freyk share his knowledge with you, teaching you spells and educating you on the nature of the demon soul, the soul arts, and their origin. This is the extent of your relationship with Freyk, if you want it to be. Learning magic in exchange for souls, a fair trade. But Freyk has a proposition. By offering demon souls to him, he can conjure up new spells, some of the most powerful ones in the game, and again share his knowledge with you. If you agree to this proposal and follow suit, Freyk will indeed make some groundbreaking discoveries, but he will also be tempted. For the soul arts are dark in nature, and so Freyk's mind is tainted. He begins pondering if lulling the old one back to slumber is indeed justified. After all, humans would be cut off from the soul arts, and all his knowledge would be lost, just like the souls in the Pandemonium. At this point, Frake still hesitates and concludes that
such blasphemy must not be permitted.
But the wheels are set in motion, and once you gazed into the abyss, there is no coming back. At the end of the game, Frake's mind is set. He states that
the Old One must not be cut off from us.
And then he pleads that you should absorb the souls of the Old One for yourself. Frake's thirst for knowledge has transformed into a lust for power that he is willing to sacrifice the world for. An unsanctimonious end for such a great mind. Wisdom turned into lunacy. Perhaps the most mysterious and undoubtedly one of the most tragic figures of Demon Souls is the Maiden in Black. At a first glance, the Maiden seems to be in charge of the Nexus, a person of authority to some extent. After all, it is her who saves you by pulling you into the Nexus at the beginning of the game. After defeating the first boss, she appears again, points you towards meeting the Monumental, and from that point on, serves as a sort of companion on your journey as she channels the souls you collected to increase your power. If you pay attention to her design and the little information you can find about her in-game, you'll soon realize that she is too just a captive of the Nexus. Like you, she wears a nexial binding around her ankle. Like you, she cannot exit this place. The Maiden herself explains that she has always been here in this Nexus, and that she has a role to fulfill. It is her duty to lull the Old One back to slumber, and once that duty is fulfilled, she will simply cease to exist. Her eyes are occluded by wax, and it remains a mystery who did this to her and why. If you strike her down, she apologizes that she is unable to die as long as the Nexus binds her. Let's go over that again. She apologizes that she cannot die. Her existence is purely to serve. She is not free and has no ambition of her own. Maybe at some point she was a simple candle maiden who got possessed by a demon that granted her the ability to extract power from souls. Maybe she's something entirely different. Whatever the case, the Maiden in Black is a tragic soul, and I can't help but feel pity for her. Demon Souls deceives you. Speaking of pitiful creatures, what is your role in all of this? Are you the chosen hero who has come to this god-forsaken land to crush all evil and restore its former glory? Well, your own background and intentions are a little murky. In the beginning of the game, you traverse through the fissure into Boletaria, guided by the Monumental. You then face your first set of enemies, fight a boss, potentially die, and ultimately end up in the Nexus. You are given an epic quest to slay all the demons, gather their souls, face the Old One, lull it back to slumber, and thus save the world, I guess? A traditional fantasy tale, the likes of which you have probably come across time and time again. But are things truly so simple? What really happens in the beginning of the game? As I said before, you are bound by the nexial binding. Yes, you were saved when the Maiden pulled you into the Nexus, but you were also trapped. You can die, you can lose your souls, but in the end, you are transported right back to the Nexus. The Monumental doesn't so much as lay out your role as a hero, but he instructs you. He tells you what to do, the role you have to fill. You are a slave, not a hero. When the Monumental asks you,
Have you the strength to accept this mission?
You can answer no, but this has no effect on the outcome of the game. You can even attack him in defiance of your mission, but all you get in return is a cheeky, almost devilish laugh. The crestfallen warrior, who rests at the base of the first archstone, has figured this out. He has realized that the reason he is here is to gather souls, and he knows that you are just another prisoner of the Nexus. The Dragling merchant hints at this too by saying that even though things are pretty bad,
But hell, at least the demons don't send us to our deaths in battle.
the longer you go on, the more you get the feeling that you're a far cry from being a hero. Perhaps more fittingly, you could be described as a tool. The most glaring moment that makes it blatantly clear how little of a hero you are is the encounter with Maiden Astraea. The saint and her loyal knight, Garl Vinland, have ventured deep into the Valley of Defilement. In the world of demon souls, when you truly have no place to go and you hit rock bottom, this is where you end up. The rancid air, the poisonous swamp, the cries of the forlorn that never seem to quiet down. It is a forsaken place for the lost and the damned. And it is this place the maiden and her knight chose as the destination for their mission. Here they have built something like a refuge for those who are simply forgotten by the world. Yes, Astraea is a demon, but what does that even mean? She has consumed a multitude of souls and has become quite powerful in the process. Isn't the player doing the same? By entering the Maiden's abode, you feel like an intruder. This is not the righteous battle of a slayer of demons against evil. This is you cutting down a caring and empathetic woman and thus extinguishing what little hope the inhabitants of the valley had. Sure, her intentions may have been nefarious after all, but you don't know that for sure. For now, all you see is a saint who abandoned her way to care for those no one cares about. And then you kill her. Alternatively, after killing Garl, Astraea will accept her fate and take her own life. But she will scar you nonetheless by saying,
Do as you like. Take your precious demon soul.
These words send a cold shiver down my spine every time I hear them. To this day, I am uncertain whether killing the maiden is a deed of good or a callous and cowardly act. The devil is in the ambiguity. It's a moment that makes you question your role in all of this. It's a moment that makes you wonder,
Has the land found its savior? Or have the demons found a new slave?
so what's the Soulslike formula? There is none. In the years following the releases of Demon Souls and Dark Souls, many games have attempted to crystallize some sort of secret recipe of how to cook up something like Souls. FromSoft has left their mark on the gaming industry and have inspired countless game studios all around the world to come up with their own take on this fan genre. Let me make it abundantly clear that I am not criticizing these studios for the audacity to dare to create something in a similar vein as Souls. I'm really happy to see games like Salt and Sanctuary and Lies of P that probably wouldn't have seen the light of day without the groundwork that was laid by FromSoftware all these years ago with this game. I am, however, arguing that the media conception of the so-called Souls-like genre is a faulty one. With this review, I hope I could allude to some of the aspects that make Souls so special to me that are mostly overlooked when media outlets discuss what a Souls-like is. I often feel that all it takes for a game to be categorized as one is a stamina bar, a block and parry mechanic on L1, an attack move on R1, dodging and iframes. Add to that some hard-hitting bosses, a corpse walk punishment for dying, and area layouts that loop around to give you the feeling of a coherent and reasonable level design, and there you have it, a Souls game. I can't help but feel that this is a futile and reductive approach to condense the essence of the soul of these games. They are so much more. It's in the dense and extensive world building, the relatable, tragic and multifaceted characters, the ambiguity and mystique of it all. It's in the nuances and the murky void that is left for your own interpretations. Nobody needs another review of Demon Souls, and yet I've made one. I hope I didn't sound too much like an old man trying to hold on to something that has been lost in the currents of time long ago. I'm not even saying that traces of the magic of this game can't be found in modern games like Elden Ring. I simply feel that our perception of Souls is often obscured by mindless discussions about difficulty, camera controls, boss strategies, and so on. At least for me, that was never the point, but merely a piece of the puzzle. Maybe you feel the same. In any case, I hope I added something of value to the discussion, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you. Thou mayest go, be gone to thine world. Thank you for watching my video. In case you liked it, consider subscribing to this channel and giving a like to this video. You can also find links to my Backlogged, where I post video game reviews pretty constantly, and you can also find me on Twitch. Thank you and goodbye.